Well, it's all right. Riding around in the breeze. Well, it's all right. If you live the life you please. Well, it's all right. Doing the best you can. Well, it's all right. As long as you lend a hand. You can sit around and wait for the phone to ring. You know, that's what I did today. I waited for the phone to ring, and ergo, you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, and a very special guest on a very sad day, the passing of Yogi Berra. And my guest is best-selling author Peter Golenbach. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Ralph?
Oh, good. You did wrote two books that concerned Yogi. One of them was Dynasty, all-time best-selling, great baseball book about the
Thank you.
Yankees. And
amazing.
And amazing, yes. And I am an amazing Met fan and a Yankee worshiper, so we always get along, and I'd like to welcome you back to the microphone. I wish it was under better circumstances.
Look, Ralph, Yogi was 90 years old.
I just thought,
nobody
as
lives
you said
forever.
Right.
And he lived a really, really fabulous life. I mean,
Absolutely.
Here's a guy who grew up in I won't say poverty, but his father was a blue-collar guy, grew up in a suburb of St. Louis. He actually grew up across the street from Joe Garagiola in an Italian town. And, you know, the funny thing
hill,
about Yogi,
what they called the hill, not the richest.
And it was a hill. I was there. It actually is a hill. And you would have thought that a man with his talent would have been signed by either the St. Louis Cardinals or the St. Louis Browns. But what happened, the Cardinals gave Joe Garagiola $500. And so when the Browns and the Cardinals came around, he said, if you want to sign me, you have to give me $500. And they wouldn't do it. And, of course, the Yankees then came along, and he wanted this $500, and they were smart enough to give him the $500. And that's how he became a Yankee.
You know, I read something, and I don't know where, but I read that Branch Rickey was running the Cardinals, and he was about to skip ship and go to the Dodgers, and he hoped that he signed Garagiola and hoped that Yogi would pass through, and he'd be able to sign him when he went to the Dodgers. I don't know how true that is.
Well, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. That's the sort of thing that Rickey certainly would have done.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because Rickey did the same sort of thing with Roberto Clemente when he went from the Dodgers to the Pirates.
Yes.
Exactly the same sort of thing, what he did. Yeah.
He covered him up. He had him hurt. He had him on the DL or in the minors. And,
Exactly.
Rickey was a genius. If we could just take a second.
Rickey was the genius.
If we could go over what he did, inventing the farm system, signing George Sisler with the St. Louis Browns, then going over to St. Louis and building that dynasty.
The Cardinals, that's right. He built the Cardinals.
Built the Cardinals.
And then he built that dynasty.
The Dodgers.
The Dodgers.
Right.
And he brought
Jackie.
The most important thing that he did was bringing up Jackie Robinson.
Exactly.
Changed American history.
And then from there goes to the Pirates.
Right.
Builds
the team
Pirates.
That wins the 61 pennant. And more. And even more. He starts something called the Continental League.
Absolutely, which is the only reason there is a New York Mets.
That's exactly right. And as a result of building the Continental League, he forced Major League Baseball into expanding to 4 more teams.
Then he goes back and is a consultant with the Cardinals yet again, and is instrumental in forming the team that wins in '64. And by this time, he's in his late 80s, for crying out loud.
That's right.
And if there is a book out there to be written, I mean, books have been written about Branch Rickey, but
certainly they
if there's something that can be revised on that guy was something else.
The problem with writing a book about Branch Rickey, as you'll have to agree, is that you and I are the only two people in America right now who care about Branch Rickey. The kids don't even know who he is.
That you put me in the same sentence with you in terms of that. I'm glowing. I'm walking on air, young man. So
Very nice.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate the compliment. Give me a little Yogi and the Mets.
Yogi and the Mets. Well, I mean,
yeah. Give me some stories.
Before you get to the Mets, Yogi Berra was part of pennant winners with the Yankees in 1947, 1949, 1950, 1951, 1952, 1953, 1955, 1956, 1957, 1958, 1960, 1961, 1962, 1963, and he was the manager of the Yankees when they went to the World Series in 1964. He then goes over to the Mets. And do you know that he went to bat 4 times when he was with the Mets? He had 4 at-bats with the Mets, believe it or not. And then after Gil Hodges died, he became the manager of the Mets, and he took the Mets to the 1973 World Championship.
Can I tell you my most embarrassing moment as a Met is when at Gil Hodges' funeral they announced that Yogi Berra is the next manager.
At the funeral?
At the frickin' funeral.
Wow.
To say everybody was there, the press is there. They wanted to save some hors d'oeuvres for the next morning. I thought it was the most classless thing I ever heard.
Certainly,
I was embarrassed. Yeah. But
the amazing thing about Yogi is you have to look up his numbers. The number of hits he had in the World Series. They didn't have playoffs back then. It was just the World Series.
Right.
And he had a remarkable number of hits and a remarkable number of home runs. And, I mean, for a little squatty guy, he was a remarkable athlete. But even more than that, he was just a tremendous, tremendous human being. He was a wonderful, wonderful person. He and Phil Rizzuto were the two people. I interviewed all the Yankees from that era. And he and Rizzuto were two of the finest men I ever met.
Wow. That's very high
Yogi,
praise.
they made fun of Yogi. They said he was ugly. They said he was stupid. But let me tell you something. Yogi had a mansion in Montclair, New Jersey that was absolutely gorgeous. He had his first nickel. I mean, he didn't piss away his money like his teammates did. He had a beautiful wife, Cora, and they had a wonderful relationship. They were together many, many years, probably 45, 50 years. They had 4 beautiful children. They had a wonderful life, and everybody loved the guy. I mean, you cannot do much better than that.
No. And everybody in the world knows your name. You don't have to be a baseball fan. He's an American icon.
He is. And he actually said a few of the things that they said he said, which is amazing enough. Yeah.
One of the things he said, one of the things he said is some of the things I said I didn't say.
Well, Garagiola, who you know always had a great way with words. Every once in a while, he'd make up a couple of Yogi sayings. But a lot of the great ones, nobody ever goes there anymore. It's too crowded. He actually said that. I was over at his house interviewing him from Dynasty. And his wife told me she had bought this piano, and Yogi had said to her, "How does it work?" Now think about that. How does it work?
The guy who's here from the blind. Somebody's at the door from the blind. Tell him we just bought curtains or something like that. Okay, well, we gave it the office. He's just a a guy. You know, he was. I saw him as being unpretentious. I never heard anything in the press.
Oh, absolutely true. Absolutely.
Am I right?
True.
Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. No, and he always had a smile on his face. He's one of the happiest people I have ever known. He just had a way about him. I said, everybody loved the guy. They really did, and they admired him. They made fun of him.
Right.
You know, they made fun of him.
He had
when he came up as a rookie.
He had the Phil Linz thing going, and I thought he handled that very well, all things considered.
Well, he had a problem, and the problem was that Ralph Houck, when he became general manager, sort of inherited Yogi, and Ralph never wanted him. I mean, that's the funny thing. Yogi managed all that year in '64 when his general manager didn't want him. And part of that, of course, was that Ralph Houck was the Yankee backup catcher all those years in the 40s and the 50s. You know, Ralph probably didn't play 10 games a year because Yogi was so, indestructible.
Well,
and
actually, he was the third string catcher to.
I guess Silvera may have been behind.
Charlie Silvera.
But neither Silvera nor Houck played very much.
No.
So there might have been some jealousy involved in it as well. And the very, very weird thing was, at the end of the '64 season, the Yankees in September were not in first place, and the Cardinals in September were not in first place.
Right.
And the Cardinals ended up firing their manager, and Houck had every intention, and he did, of firing Yogi and bringing the Cardinal manager over to manage the Yankees. And the odd thing was,
it was a bad fit too.
As soon as that happened, that was the end of the Yankee dynasty. It was all over.
And I don't know if it was a combination of just the farm system dried up.
Well, you understand something. In 1960, Webb and Webb told me that in 1960 they wanted to sell. In '60, they didn't sell until after the '64 season. They didn't sell until after '64. So for 4 years they had been wanting to sell. And when you want to sell, you then don't invest in your farm system. And that's the other thing that happened to the Yankees. That's why all their talent dried up, because Topping and Webb stopped spending their money on that.
Okay. So knowing that they were getting out.
Right.
Right. And I think CBS bought the team at that point.
CBS, absolutely. Mike Burke and the bunch bought the team.
Right.
And what they didn't realize, they thought they were buying the great Yankee team that had won all of those pennants in World Series. And, in fact, they were buying a shell of a team. And as you know, Maris got hurt, and Mantle got hurt, and Ford got hurt, and there was nobody to replace him.
And Bob Richardson retired, and they had Horace Clark.
Yep. Yep. The wonderful Horace Clark. Yes.
The wonderful Horace Clark. As Fritz Peterson writes in his book, Fritz has been a guest on my show too.
I love Fritz. Tremendous. Fritz is wonderful. I was at the stadium. I was at the stadium one day when Fritz showed up with Mike Kekich's wife, with Mike Kekich's children, and Mike Kekich's dog in Mike Kekich's station wagon. And I looked at that and I went, uh-oh.
Oh, this is 19... To set the tone, this is the 70s. This is the 70s. This isn't like the early 70s.
Right. That's
Things
right.
were a lot, and this was the staid New York Yankees. I mean, it wasn't
this
like...
was the
unbelievable
fall of
shock.
1972, because I was researching. I was at the stadium. I was researching Dynasty at the time. When I saw this, I went, uh-oh, what's this all about? And as, I don't know, your listeners may not realize it, but of course at the time, Mike Kekich and Fritz Peterson had exchanged families. They swapped wives. Kids.
Children, dogs, fish,
everybody.
The whole ball of wax.
I know it.
And you know the nice thing is that Fritz, I don't think Mike and his new
no, that didn't last. Mike and Mrs. Peterson didn't last, but
Fritz lasted for a long time. They're still together. They're both happy as hell. And Fritz is another one of those guys who is. For one reason or another, in his case, he's a cancer recoverer, 2-time cancer recoverer, and he appreciates, like a lot of folks do that have to be shocked into it, that, there is mortality. Life doesn't last forever. You better enjoy every day. He was enjoying it every day anyway. He didn't need a reminder. There's a man who enjoys life. But
Fritz is a very good guy, too. He's a very, very good person.
He definitely is. And I have had the honor of
Kekich
having
is,
him.
too. I ran into Kekich while I was writing my book about the Senior League. Back in 89-90, Kekich was playing on one of the senior leagues.
You and I have talked about that book on this air, and I love that book. I love it because it just showed guys as that they just loved the game. They were certainly not into it for the money, or they
That's
certainly.
Absolutely true.
And the ones that not then, and the ones that were into it for the money, there was almost a story in itself in that, because as you say, a lot of people go through a lot of bucks in the game of baseball, and this was pre-free agent. So these guys on free agency didn't come around until 73 or 74, I think.
77, I believe.
77,
something like that. 76 was, I think, when they signed, or maybe it may have been 74 when they signed Catfish Hunter, but that was a fluke. And then after Catfish Hunter, of course, Marvin Miller broke the whole thing open with Messersmith and McNally. And I think the first group of free agents came in 76, if I'm not mistaken, with Reggie Jackson coming to the Yankees and so forth and so on.
Yeah, if you could tell me why both Marvin Miller and Gil Hodges are not in the Hall of Fame, I'd like to know.
Because the people voting are incompetent.
Okay, that's a good answer. That says it all. Either that, or uninformed, or they're not getting the information, or whatever.
I don't know. I don't understand it at all. Marvin Miller should have been in 10 years ago while he was still alive. Obviously, they didn't put him in because there was so much resentment over the fact that he raised players' salaries so much. Gil Hodges, I'll never understand it. Gil Hodges was not only a fabulous player for the Brooklyn Dodgers, he led the Mets to their first World Championship in '69. Everybody thought the world of Gil. I have no idea. He and Jack Morris are two guys, players who deserve, based on their numbers, to be in the Hall of Fame, and they're not.
Well, I'll say this about Gil. This is the first year he was turned down this year, and it was the first year that the voters were told to include, as they did with Joe Torre, both managing and playing. Now, Gil's right on the border. There's top 100 players that aren't in it. There's a book about that. A lot of guys right on the border of should they be in, should they be. But if you include his managerial career, when he took
You don't have to include his managerial career. He was with the Dodgers pennant championships in 1949, in 1952, 1953, 1955, 1956. Isn't that enough?
Yeah, that should be.
I mean, the other person that I'm just furious about is Roger Maris. Maris was with the Yankees World Championship, pennant winning teams in 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. He got traded to the Cardinals against his will and helped the Cardinals win pennants in 67 and 68. I mean, why is Roger Maris in there along with Gil? With a bad wrist, yes. Yeah. Absolutely. They don't win those two pennants in St. Louis without Roger.
And that was a solid team too. That was solid. All Shannon and Brock and Flood and all those guys. He can make a very good case. I think his average was down. But he was MVP 2 years in a row. He was MVP before the home run chase. That's
Absolutely.
what a lot of people don't realize.
Sure.
Yeah. So, got one more, Yogi, as a Met story for me? Anything that we should know? Maybe anything that you didn't put in the Met book, amazing, that you wish you had, or something you put in?
No, that's not the way I work. If I get something if I get something, I put it in there. You don't leave stuff out; you put it in.
Okay, you and Marty
Yogi,
Appel, exactly. You answered
Yogi
that
was
question the same way. You're. Go ahead. What do you got?
Yogi was just a solid guy. He was not somebody you necessarily got close to. He wasn't, a slap you on the back kind of a guy. He was a little shy in a way, as a manager. He was not somebody who made a big deal about himself. But obviously he had enough talent to win pennants because he did it twice. Right. So in addition to all that fabulous hitting, he was a Hall of Fame catcher in terms of his ability to catch. He was a Hall of Famer in terms of his ability to hit. And he won 2 pennants with 2 different teams. So the guy was a legend. He was just a wonderful, wonderful player and a fabulous person to boot.
All right. As are you, my friend. Thank you very, very much for gracing the mic and coming back. And let's keep it going on a semi-regular basis because...
anytime, Ralph.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter. This has really been an honor, and it's an ongoing one. I'm going to end the show the way I always end segments. I ask you and my audience to keep your dreams wet and your humor dry. Keep your kids out of military recruiting offices. It's very, very important that you not mess up the family by making your kid fodder for a war that you don't even know who the hell side we're on. And all war is bad, and war changes families, and it's not good. And while you're at it, keep your kids off the laps of clerics that wear dresses, just to be on the safe side. They're not just
wise.
All right? You never know. They're not all bad, but a lot of stuff has been in the paper that people don't seem to read. And keep on keeping on. That's
all right. Very good, Ralphie. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, my friend.
I'll talk to you soon. All righty.
Be well.
Good night. Bye. Bye-bye.